Ever since watching the anime Higurashi, or When They Cry, I've been fascinated by the concept of time loops. Suffering through the same trials and tribulations in a way that death isn't an end, but a reset button to the nightmare. For those unaware, a popular fan theory for Silent Hill 2 has existed since the discussion of the game's lore spread throughout the internet. The popular fan theory suggests that our protagonist, James Sunderland, is trapped in an endless cycle of torment by the town of Silent Hill. The game that we play is believed to be a single iteration, with James reawakening after every death to relive the nightmare. Whether he's trapped for an eternity or until he comes to terms with the transgressions is up for interpretation. Prior to the release of Silent Hill 2 Remake, the supporting evidence for the theory is as follows. Bodies that resemble James are found throughout the town. The creators say that all endings are canon, hints in Silent Hill 4 that James never returned home, Maria returning after multiple deaths, and James believing that his wife has been gone for 3 years. Knowing that James never returned home after the events of Silent Hill 2 suggests that the in-water ending is canon. However, this contradicts the all endings are canon answer from an interview with the creators. Additionally, if all endings were canon, then that would suggest that these endings happened in different loops. And if so, that would be another explanation for James never returning home. This is further substantiated by New Game Plus, changing the values behind the scenes for each playthrough that makes getting a different ending more likely. The death and revival of Maria suggests that Silent Hill can bring people back to life with no memory of their death, as well as the lead up to it. It's also evident that most of the dead bodies that we find throughout the town of Silent Hill are James's character model, which is the most on-the-nose evidence to support loop theory that I don't think I need to explain. And lastly, James believing that his wife died 3 years ago is inconsistent with the statement that we hear from Laura, with her claiming that she's spoken to her recently. This is further substantiated by the letter from Mary suggesting that she was alive not that long ago. This discrepancy may suggest that James has been looping for about 3 years worth of time within the town, or some other issue with the perception of time. Now that we understand how the theory originated and brewed over time, the Silent Hill 2 remake has revived this idea, with some believing that the remake is in fact a sequel in the form of another loop. James is clearly a lot older in the remake, suggesting the passage of time, as well as the continued use of James's models of deceased bodies. But the biggest evidence comes in the form of these strange moments accompanied by a haunting musical tone to convey the sense of déjà vu. These moments are ones from the original version of the game, except that there are remains of actions already being done. One example of this is in the prison section. In the original, you need to open up a door on the floor by making a makeshift handle by melting a wax figure with a lighter, then attaching a horseshoe to make a handle to the door. In the remake, we see the remains of the wax on the door with a horseshoe laying next to it. It's almost like someone has been here before. The game is littered with moments like this to drive that notion home, but the most compelling evidence for the remake to confirm loop theory, Polaroid photos are scattered about with numbers on the back of them. At first, it almost seems random, but when all photos are gathered, you can decode a message using the numbers on the back and the number of a specific object on the photo that says the following: "You've been here for 2 decades. Once this message was discovered, the internet went crazy, with Bloober Team even confirming that the message was properly decoded. Some fans believe that this confirmed the long-standing theory that James has been stuck in an eternal loop of suffering. After discussions and theories for the last 2 decades. If everything I've presented thus far has convinced or confirmed your beliefs of Silent Hill 2's loop theory, then I would like to take a moment to tear it all down. Like I said earlier, I have a fascination with this concept and even leaned into the idea of this theory being true, with the leave ending being James breaking the cycle. But since Silent Hill 2 Remake has come out, the original loop theory is actually broken if you believe that Remake is a sequel. Now of course you can say that the original loop theory is still viable with the remake having zero connection, especially since the new iteration has none of the original writers involved. But to say that Remake confirms this theory and is in fact a sequel actually creates far more problem than going beyond a simple suspension of disbelief. The initial reaction of seeing James and Maria being older can be a convincing piece of evidence in isolation. But I have to ask a simple question. Why is it that everyone else is still the same age when James and Maria are older? If we are to believe that James being older is due to the passage of time, this creates a continuity problem. Angela, Eddie, and Laura are individuals that just so happen to be in Silent Hill at the same time for different reasons. Even without confirming the ages of Eddie and Angela, it's unlikely that they're roughly 20 years older than their original counterparts just by looking at them. Not only that, but Laura is confirmed to be the same age in both games. If we believe that James is aging as he loops but no one else does, we would have to conclude that these three characters are also parts of James's projection just like Maria is. These characters would then solely exist as props and plot points for James's eternal suffering, which sounds fine on the surface, but completely recontextualizes the story in a negative manner. All three characters would then be robbed of their individual stories that range in complexity, with Angela's story being equally tragic in a different way, showing the horrors that can exist from a female's point of view. You can even make the argument that her being called to the town is more complex than James, as her killing her father is much more sympathetic than James killing his wife. If we are to believe James aging as evidence of loop theory instead of a simple creative decision, then her story loses all meaning because it can't be real. The only way to reconcile this is to accept the illogical conclusion that the town only aged James and Maria, but not Angela, Eddie, or Laura. We would also have to make the assumption that Eddie, Angela, and Laura are also looping in the same manner as James and being punished for the same reasons. The only upside to believing that these characters aren't real is jumping through some mental gymnastics and connecting these stories to being different aspects of James's psyche, but doing so would be a completely different rabbit hole to go into. The other side of the aging evidence that would not make sense, even if the characters aged in the same manner, would be Laura herself. Unlike James, Eddie, and Angela, Laura is a completely innocent child that was not called to the town of Silent Hill to be punished, but instead was there of her own accord. So, why would she be present for multiple loops over 20 years while still being a child? Not only that, but James still believing it's been 3 years since Mary's death would throw out the idea that he's experienced 3 years of torment in the original version. Prior to the remake, I could rationalize this by saying that Laura's arrival to the town is what gave James a chance to break the loop in the form of the leave ending, as she would likely be present for only a single loop by pure chance. And even then, that still doesn't reconcile the 3 years that James would have experienced looping versus the short period of time that Laura experienced between Mary's death and now. The bodies throughout Silent Hill resembling James is another piece of evidence that people point to support the loop theory. From a practical standpoint, it was believed that the assets were simply reused in the PS2 version due to technical limitations. 3 gaming generations later, and this issue is no longer present, making the use of James's model for other deceased corpses a creative decision. As most of us know by now, Silent Hill 2 specifically might be the most densely packed game in terms of metaphors and symbolism. This in and of itself gives players a reason to believe that there's a deeper meaning for the reused assets beyond a technical one. One conclusion is that the corpses of James being a representation of his desire for death and suicidal tendencies, which we see play out in the in-water ending. The other option that people ran with was the already mentioned loop theory support. The former option I believe makes more sense thematically, as James's journey is a battle with his own guilt and death being an easy way out. The other issue I found with this comes from the last point of James's aging. If James has been looping for 20 years and each death leaves behind a previous body, then the town should be littered with bodies, or James is really good at surviving each time until the end. From the horse's mouth, we've been told that every ending is canon. However, this can be interpreted in many ways. Outside of Silent Hill 3, both new and old games have a multitude of endings that recontextualize what happened. While yes, most Silent Hill games, including Silent Hill 2, have a clear best ending in terms of what happened to the protagonist, but it was never clear that this or any specific ending is what actually happened in isolation. For example, Silent Hill 1's bad ending suggests that everything happened within Harry's head as he bled out in a car accident from the opening. In isolation, this bad ending was actually viable considering that there's scenes within the game that hint towards this being the truth. When the game was originally made, it was likely that they wanted all endings to be reasonably viable to make decisions and theories persist throughout time. Originally, Team Silent wanted all games after the first to be individual stories that did not relate to others in the future. By not needing to worry about timelines and canon events, there was no reason for there to be a true ending for any game to ever be established. Instead, whatever ending the player got was the true ending, simply because that's what they experienced. By saying that all endings being canon is proof of loop theory is simply twisting the creator's intent to fit your own narrative. Furthermore, the hint in Silent Hill 4 that James not returning home is a detail likely forced upon them by Konami, as they started meddling with Silent Hill's direction after the success of Silent Hill 2. If the original creators never intended for the events of Silent Hill 2 to leak into other titles, then we can infer that this mention of James does not support what happened post Silent Hill 2, but instead is an Easter egg at best and corporate meddling at worst. While it is true that each title after Silent Hill was intended to be a standalone story, they still exist within the same universe and abide by the same set of rules set by the first game. Silent Hill 1 is nothing more than the foundation to explain why the town exists, with everything after being a simple byproduct of those events. If we assume that the town has the ability to force people into time loops, then we would have to extrapolate that to all future Silent Hills and assume that other people who are called to the town were also experiencing this loop. You could also make the argument that the lore is broken in future games anyway, so why does any of this matter? But the fact of the matter is that the core basis of the town's rules are still utilized in future titles, albeit a little bit bastardized. So far, I've presented why loop theory is broken and why the remake is not a sequel, but I've still danced around the biggest piece of evidence to support the existence of loop theory. The decoded photos telling us that we've been here for 2 decades, coupled with James being roughly 2 decades old. Although I think Bloober Team overall missed the mark with his remake, I can still acknowledge the effort that was put in to stir up the community. When someone on Twitter posted "Loop Theory confirmed," Bloober Team responded saying, "Is it?" Now this could be Bloober Team trying to keep the discussion going for as long as possible, but there's more pointing towards this not being as literal as it seems. For one, Bloober Team has stated that they want to cram in as many Easter eggs and references to prior discussions and theories into the game. One example is the pre-existing theory that the monsters fear Pyramid Head and his great sword. Using this, they've included a section in the remake where you have to pass through a gauntlet of monsters coming out of the walls by dragging the great sword through it. This small section plays into the theory that the monsters are in fact scared of this sword. So simply put, the idea of loop theory is nothing more than just an Easter egg. Not only that, but to say that we've been here for 2 decades raises another question. Who has been here for 2 decades? This message is likely breaking the fourth wall, telling the player that they're still trying to determine if loop theory is real and that they've been searching for 2 decades. To close things out, I want to say that I don't hate loop theory outright. Through the lens of the original game, there are a lot of different directions this idea can further expand upon on the themes and deeper meaning of the game. It's when we get another version of the game that's aware of the concept and plays with it, but does not alter the story in a way that makes sense through the lens of the theory, that the theory itself falls apart. It can still be fun to suspend your disbelief for a moment for the sake of discussion, but when all evidence points to this topic being false, it becomes foolish to ignore the evidence for the sake of maintaining your own narrative. James tried to maintain a false narrative throughout this entire game, but by the end of it, he was forced to accept what he did. Hey everyone, thank you all for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing for more content. I've been your host, Fake Alias, and I'll see you in the next video.